You know the old traditional song, Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come. Well, baseball came to Kansas City, but not for the Royals. They were once home to the Kansas City Athletics, and they bombed in Kansas City. No winning seasons at all in their 13-year stay from 1955 to 1967. So in 1968, Charlie Finley got the A's to move to Oakland. The Royals bullied their way into a AL expansion team by force. I'll tell you all about that after the intro. Well, this is the intro. I'll tell you all about it later. But the fact of the matter is, it's the bicentennial year of 1976 for America. And America's favorite pastime, baseball, was going for broke. Two teams, the Kansas City Royals and the New York Yankees, were battling tooth and nail for the AL pennant. The more powerful and more media savvy New York Yankees moved on, whereas Kansas City, the small town team in a lot of people's minds, failed. But I mean, to get to the ALCS was a chore of itself for Kansas City and its franchise. But what could have been if the Kansas City Royals had pulled off the impossible? In their first playoff appearance, they would win a trip to the World Series. Not win the World Series, but win a trip to the World Series. So let's talk about the 1976 Kansas City Royals in this video. You've got Jeff Diamond, you've got one man, you've got a hat, a bat, and that's definitely not all. You got the bleachers, got it from spring to fall, you got a dog, a drink, and that umpire's call. What do you want? Let's play what if. Okay, okay, Cutter, do some what ifs. Okay, okay, Cutter, do some what ifs. So the Kansas City Royals are an American League franchise that have been around since 1969. Don't laugh. Anyway, Kansas City actually was the home to some great Negro League teams and a farm team, the main farm team for the New York Yankees. So they got themselves a major league franchise by the use of the fact that the Philadelphia A's were hemorrhaging money. The Philly A's were known for having great seasons, and then within a few years they had to tear it up due to financial restraints and do rebuilds. It worked in a sense, but they had a lot of last place finishes and a lot of first place finishes. But the fact is, the Athletics franchise moved to Kansas City, and from 1955 to 1967, the A's played at Municipal Stadium and were a major league team. Unfortunately, though, that franchise got blown out of the water due to the fact that they never had a winning season in Kansas City, and Charlie Finley, when he bought the team from Arnold Johnson in 1961, with his innovations that were cool and all that, including that rabbit popping up to bring baseballs to the umpires. The fact of the matter was that he wanted to move the team away from Kansas City and managed to get Oakland in 1968 to host baseball. Missouri Senator Simonton was pissed off, and he basically sued Major League Baseball, or tried to. Major League Baseball decided that when they were making the Great Expansion of 1969 and put two teams in the American League, and thus putting two divisions of six, East and West, they decided Kansas City would get their baseball franchise. Now, actually, they were planning on putting Kansas City and the second American League franchise, which ended up being Seattle, in 1971. But because of the antitrust suit, they moved it to 1969 alongside Montreal and San Diego in the National League. So anyway, Kansas City does their job. They're in the American League. You know, they have growing pains and all that. They make a crafty trade with the Mets to get Amos Otis, who is one of the best Royals of all time. Kansas City would go off and on about things. 1976 was the first time they made the playoffs and, of course, went to the LCS against the Yankees. They did so again in 77 and 78 with the same result, a loss to the Yankees in the LCS. In 1980, they got the revenge, sweeping the Yankees and going to the World Series, but unfortunately, because of George Brett's hemorrhoids and Willie Wilson just sucking at the plate, the Phillies won the World Series against the Royals. The Royals would continue to be decent in the 80s. In 1985, they won the AL West, surviving the California Angels in a tight pennant race. Kansas City would then face the Blue Jays, lose three of the first four games, and pre 1985 in the LCS, that was games that matched Blue Jays would face the Cardinals in the World Series. I already did Blue Jays Cardinals last video, and with disastrous results. But nevertheless, the Royals came back to win the series from 3-1 down, and again were down 3-1 in the World Series to the Cardinals, who by all accounts should have won the World Series. Don Denkinger should not have been the catalyst for the World Series and all that. But the fact of the matter was that it happened. And the Royals came back from 3-1 down, won game six thanks to Dankinger's blown call and a few comedy of error movements by the Cardinals. And the fact that the Cardinals basically spent more time being pissed off about being robbed in game six rather than play game seven the hard way. And obviously they had a few ejections and injuries. So the Royals won the World Series, and everyone thought Kansas City was going to be the team to beat. But Dick Howser developed brain cancer and died a couple years later, and the Royals franchise was just lost. Superly lost. The Royals had no postseason appearances till 2014 when they shocked everyone by making it to the AL wildcard game against Oakland on home turf, and then coming back from that 3-run deficit to the A's and winning in the 12th. The Royals would play lights out baseball. They swept the Angels in the ALDS and swept the Orioles in the ALCS, winning their first 8 games of the postseason. Something no team ever did. Now, the 76 Reds, you could argue, swept through the World Series and LCS opponents. They did, but the LCS was best of 5, so that meant Cincy only had 7 wins instead of 8 for the Royals. And of course, if you count the wildcard game. So, regardless of that, the Royals played the Giants tough and lost in 7 games. I actually was cheering for the Royals to win the World Series against the Giants. And in 2015, they made it to the World Series. They got past Houston thanks to Carlos Correa's terrible misplaying of a ball in the 8th inning that led to the Royals winning Game 4 of that LDS against Houston because they were down 2-1. Houston would have went to the LCS. And then they parlayed that into a 6-game series against the Blue Jays, which they would, and then a 5-game win over the Mets in the World Series. So Kansas City's been great. Bobby Witt Jr. has played his heart out. But yeah, we're talking about the 1976 squad, the squad that could have pulled something that the Marlins did in 1997. First postseason appearance and a World Series to boot. Either ho there. Yeah, right. Well, let's talk about the 1976 Kansas City Royals season. It was their 8th in Major League Baseball. Remember, they came back from their hiatus with the A's because of the antitrust suit. But anyway, the Royals won their first division title with 90 wins, as Whitey Herzog was the manager for Kansas City. They were playing Whitey Ball. Kansas City would lose in the ALCS, and George Brett won the batting title. So Killebrew was released by the Royals. He was basically an anomaly. But yeah, he retired. Nelson Bryce was traded to Texas for Dave Nelson, and then his brother Ned Roger was signed by the Royals as a free agent. Kansas City in the regular season had a 90-72 mark, 2.5 games ahead of Oakland and 5 ahead of Minnesota. As you can see on the right-hand side, the Royal Vision scoreboard. It was kind of cool and all that. So they would do all the standings and all the graphics. Anyway, against their opponents, they were above 500, every team except for the Rangers, who were 7-11. Dave Nelson was the DH, Amos Otis at center, George Brett at third, John Mayberry played first, Hal McCrane left, Al Cowens in right, Fred Healy caught, Freddie Patek for short, and Frank White took second base. Then the Royals decided to trade Healy to the Yankees for Larry Gura because they needed some hitting help. Fred Healy would go on to be a Yankees and Mets broadcaster, and Larry Gura was just the piece of the puzzle the Royals needed. They drafted Ken Phelps in the 15th round of the 1976 draft. And of course, Ken Phelps will be remembered by Seinfeld fans for um, George Costanza's father, Frank Costanza's rant saying, "Why the hell did you trade Buhner for Ken Phelps? Because Phelps was a decent player for Seattle, and then he went to the Yankees in exchange for Jay Buhner." And Frank puts up the stats: 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, and a rocket of an arm. But nevertheless, the Royals had pitching. Steve Busby was a good pitcher. Al Fitzmaurice, Larry Gura, Dennis Leonard, Mark Littell. We'll know about him later. Roger Nelson, Marty Patton, Ray Sadecki, and Paul Splinter. Catchers, Fran Healy, then Buck Martinez and John Wadham were basically the catchers after Healy left. Infielders, George Brett, John Mayberry, future Blue Jay. Wow, alone Buck Martinez. Freddie Patak, Jimmy Quirk, Cookie Rojas, Frank White. They had Al Cowens, Boober Jones, Hal McRae, Amos Otis, and Willie Wilson in the outfield. April, they sucked. They were 2 games below 500. September and October, they were 12 and 19, but still, they did quite well in May and June to offset it. And then, well, you see, Buck Martinez was the main catcher. Mayberry, White, Brett, Patek, Pocket, Otis, Cowens, and McRae at DH. Starting pitchers, Leonard was 17 and 10, Fitzmaurice 15 and 11, Splintorf 11 and 8. Hassler and Busby were pitched later on. Doug Bird had a 12-win game. Larry Gura pitched 20 games for the Royals. I guess he wasn't the starter yet. All right, so the ALCS started with the Yankees going to Kansas City and seeing Catfish Hunter beat Larry Gura. In game 2, Paul Splintorf took down Ed Figueroa with the Royals scoring multiples in the first, the sixth, and the eighth. Yankees won game 3 at home 5-3. Doc beat Hassler with Sparky Lyle picking up the save. Game 4 saw Kansas City come back to win. Bird beats Catfish Hunter with Mingori the save. Nettles hitting 2 runs. But game 5 was the big one. It was nip and tuck the whole way. The Royals scored 3 runs in the 8th to tie the game. And then Chris Chambliss led off against Mark Littell. And he hits one to right center field. Trying to channel my inner Howard Cosell. Chris Chambliss has hit a home run for the New York Yankees. Won the pennant for the New York Yankees. A thrilling occasion with overtones of the World Series in Game 6 and 7. Look at the mob Chris Chambliss at the plate. It was one of the most memorable things. I want to see if I can actually, if they'll actually give like the call and all that. Yeah, Chambliss. Yeah, I guess they didn't give the whole thing. But yeah, Chris Chambliss had hit a pennant-winning home run. You never see that. It was the first time the LCS ended in a home run on a home run. It wasn't the last. But of course, yeah, Chris Chambliss had the first one. Of course, Aaron Boone hit one like that in 2003, winning it and all that. So this was just amazing and all that. So anyhow, the Royals and Yankees were battling. Now, what would have happened if the Royals actually did win the World Series berth as the Yankees and faced those big red machine guys? We'll see. So here we go. We got the sim matchup between the 76 Royals and the 76 Reds. Now, the Reds not only had the most wins, would have more wins than the Royals, but because of the fact that they rotated the World Series hosting duties for home field advantage, going to 7 games. The Reds had it for 1, 2, 6, 7. Of course, this was the Big Red Machine's second year, trying to defend their 1975 title. So we're going to go with Dennis Leonard to start Game 1 against Gary Nolan. Now, interesting to note, I try to go as true to form as I can with, of course, the lineups for Game 1 of the World Series as they happened. There's one tiny little change you see, and that's Hal McRae in right field. Tom Pocat technically would be right field, but Hal McRae usually was at DH. And since there's no DH in Cincinnati, McRae has to be in the lineup. So Don Gullett was going to be the starter, but as you can see in the pull down screen, he's not there as a starter. So that means that I can't do anything about it. So I have to go with what it is. And Gary Nolan did pitch game 4, so it would have been a 147, I think. Game 1 sees the Royals win in the 13th, 8-7. Unreal. Regardless of that, Joe Morgan hit a double to score Ken Griffey Sr. for the Reds. But then Buck Martinez, after Amos Otis got on base, hit a home run to right field to make it 2-1. Buck Martinez had home run power? Guess so. The Reds would score 2 runs on Rosa's single to score Bench and Concepcion, 3-2. In the fourth, Amos Otis doubles to score Brett. Al Cowan's fielder's choice to score Otis. And then Tony Perez scores a Texas League single to score Morgan 4-4. And then in the top of the sixth, Tom Pocat came in to pinch hit for Leonard. Was intentionally walked to face Patak, who had a 2 RBI single, and that put Pedro Borbon Sr. on the mound. So it looked good for the Royals. They're up 6-4. Morgan grounded out to first. Foster walks. Perez hits in fielder's choice, so the Royals are 1 out away from the first game. Geronimo walks and then Bench walks. Bases loaded for Tom Hall, and then Concepcion hits a 2 RBI single to score Perez and Geronimo. Dan Driesen comes in to pinch hit for McElhinney and grounds out. So Sam Mariento comes in to pitch for the Reds. Runners on second and third for Patak, and he grounds out. The Royals had runners on first and second. Nelson came in to pinch hit for Gura and popped out. And then the Royals on the 13th, Pat Darcy, the guy who gave up that home run to Carlton Fisk in the 75 World Series in real life, gives up a single to Patak, and then McRae hits a bloop double. Foster throws to the plate, but Patak is called safe. Brett pops up. Otis singles to score McRae to make it 8-6. Otis decides to steal second. I don't know why, but he's out, and Mayberry runs out. So Griffey Sr. hit a single. So did Rose. Condon would uncork a wild pitch, scoring Griffey Sr. Morgan grounded out, Foster struck out, and then Perez flies out. So the 76 Royals went 8-7 in the 13th inning. Arriola went 5 2/3. Bourbon went 2 1/3. Then McElhinney, Sarmiento, Golet, pitching to one guy, and Pat Darcy. Meanwhile, the Royals, Leonard went 5, Mangori went 2, Mark Littell inning 2/3. They gave it to Tom Hall for the save, but it didn't work. Larry Gurrow pitched 2, and Marty Patton pitched 2 for the win. So that was game 1. Game 2 would see Fitzmaurice take on Bellingham. Bellingham in real life pitched game 2, and the Royals would lose 11-6 as the Reds remembered who they were. But the Royals started out hot. Brett hit a triple to score Patek. Jack Bellingham throws a wild pitch to score a run. Buck Martinez triples for Otis to score. Ken Griffey Sr. has a terrible time and has a 2-base error on him. So it's 4-0. But the Reds in the first remember who they were. Perez hits a 2 RBI single score. Rosa Morgan. Geronimo grounds out, but Foster scores to make it 4-3. And in the bottom of the second, Foster hits in the fielder's choice with the bases loaded to score Griffey Sr., and then Perez hit a single to score Rose, 5-4. But then Freddie Patak singles to score Mayberry and Cowan, 6-5. And then in the bottom of the fourth, Perez flies out to tie the game at 6. They put Marty Patton in, and Geronimo doubles to score Foster. Is it Bob Bailey? Yeah, Bob Bailey, the former Expo, comes in to pinch hit for Bellingham and hits a double to score Cesar Geronimo and Dave Concepcion. Ken Griffey hits a triple, makes it 10-6. And then Geronimo hits a double in the 7th. That was pretty much it. McRae, Brennan always went down to order. Bellingham pitched 4 innings and then gave it to Don Gullett, who pitched 5 innings of 2-hit ball and got the win. Don Gullett was on the team. Al Fitzmaurice went 3 1/3, and then Patton inning 2/3, Mangori 1.2, and Hall 1.1. So it's 1-1 headed back to Kansas City. And Paquette back in the game in right field. Hal McRae at DH. Okay. But Pat Zachary will pitch against Splintorf. They went with Splintorf for game 3. And the Reds win 11-5. They scored 4 in the second. Concepcion hits a 2 RBI single to score President Geronimo. Griffey Sr. hits a triple to score Dreesen and Concepcion, but he can't score himself. Freddie Potak takes a bases loaded walk. Dreesen hits a triple. Brett Boots one scored Dreesen, and Concepcion doubles to score Bench. Marty Patton then came into pitch. 7-1, and then Buck Martinez, bases loaded, hits an RBI, a bases clearing double to score McRae, Brett, and Mayberry. 7-4. But then Tony Perez hits a 3-run home run that smacks the wall. So Tony Perez makes it 10-4. And then in the 7th, when Steve Busby came in the pitch, Rose grounded out to short. They got 1 out, but not the 2 outs. 11-4. Otis hits an RBI single score Paquette, but Mayberry and Martinez can't take advantage of the bases loaded. Splintorf went 2 2/3 innings, gave up 7. Patton went 3 1/3, and then Steve Busby went for 3 innings. Pat Zachary went 4 innings, did not finish the 5th inning, so he can't get credit for the win. And Don Gullett came out for another 5-inning appearance, giving up a run, but it doesn't matter. They have to go back to the top of the rotation for both teams. They go with 3-man rotations, and it works for the Royals. They win 6-4. It's 2-2. Morgan hits a single score Griffey. Perez scores Rose. McRae single score Paquette. And then the Royals were up 4-2 thanks to McRae's RBI double score Paquette. Otis single score McRae, and Mayberry flies out for a sac fly for Brett. And then Paquette hits a single score. Buck Martinez gets Pedro Bourbon to pitch, and then Concepcion makes an error, makes it 6-2. Foster grounds out to score Rose. Geronimo singles. Dreesen walks. Bench flies out, so Geronimo goes to third, and then Concepcion grounds out. They concede the run because it doesn't really matter. And then Griffey Sr. runs out. Leonard went 7 2/3. Littell got the save. Gary Nolan went 6 2/3. Bond went an inning a third. So it goes back to the top of the order. Well, second guys, Billingham and Fitzmaurice, and the 2-2 split goes to the Reds, 14-5. Otis single to score McRae. Dan Dreesen, Wiesen hits a 2-run homer, makes it 2-1. It was that way till the 5th when Perez hits a 2 RBI double, scored Rosa Morgan and Geronimo singles. Patton comes in the pitch, it's 5-1 Reds. But the Royals had a trick up their loose lead. Brett fouls out to the left, but it is a sac fly. And then Otis doubles to score McRae, 5-3. And then the Reds score 4 in the 6th. Morgan sac fly. Then 3 straight bases loaded walks. Geronimo, Dreesen, and Bench should have taken the guy out. Rose then came in for a blue double to score Griffey, and then Joe Morgan went deep 12-3. Busby comes in the pitch, low, too late. 12-4. Perez and Geronimo back-to-back singles score Morgan and Foster. Brett hits in fielder's choice, but it doesn't matter. 14-5. Fitzmaurice only goes 4 2/3. Patton went inning a third, giving up 7 runs. And then Busby, 3 innings, giving up 2. In the meantime, Billy went 6 innings. Don Gullett went 3. Gave up a few runs, but technically got a save. So the Reds can ice it right here in Game 6. That's what these teams want. And it will be the Reds who crushed the Royals' hopes in Game 6, 13-4. At least it wasn't a sweep. Cowens hit an RBI double score Otis. Otis scores on a sac fly to score Patek. Patek gets an RBI single to score Buck to make it 3-0. And it looked good. It was like the Royals were going to win and force Game 7. However, Brett misplays a routine grounder. Zachary hits a dribbler. They'll get the force out at second. Griffey walks. Patek misplays an easy play. Bases loaded. Morgan takes a walk to score Zachary. And then George Foster hits a grand slam down the left field line to make it 5-3. Perez then walks. Patek boots another ball. Bench with 2 RBIs. On a double with Perez and Geronimo. Patton comes in the pitch. Concepcion walks. Zachary flies out. Griffey Sr. walks. Then Rose and Morgan take bases loaded walks to make it 9-3. 9 runs on 3 hits for the team. And then Johnny Bench hit us another 2-run tater tot to make it 11-3. Amos Otis hits a sac fly. Pete Rose hits a 2-run home run to make it 13-4. Getting Gura and Busby came in. Griffey Sr. and Rose made sure he had an infinite ERA this game. Gura came in, and that was it, 13-4. Trying to mention Zachary 6 1/3. Goal at 2 2/3 innings. Could have got another save. Should have been. To get a save. And the Royals, Splintorf only went 4 1/3. Patton an inning 2/3. Busby pitched to 2 batters, gave up 2 runs, and then Larry Gura had to finish the game. So in the butt end of things, the Reds would have won the World Series anyway. But hey, it was 6 games. The Royals would have had some decency. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.